coming up next is a presentation from the RFI team who is behind Africa Calling podcast, which is a collaborative podcast between journalists who are correspondents in Africa in the Hause Bureau, which is in Lagos, as well as the Kiswahili Bureau in Nairobi, sharing their insights. They're giving us an inside look. Basically, they're opening up the box into what it takes to make their podcast, which is a current affairs podcast that goes in depth, giving analysis into the news of the day. They also do cover the voices and perspectives from Lusophone Africa and West and Central Africa. So we welcome you, Laura Bagnetto, to give us an inside look. We are so excited ourselves as well, being able to have the opportunity to actually have the box opened into so many podcasts and learn so much. I mean, after this, I don't know what excuse anyone will have for not scaling up and expanding their work in their podcast. But welcome, Laura. We are excited to have you on and to hear what you have to share with us.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Melissa and Josephine. Habari za asubuhi for everybody in Kenya. My name's, as Melissa said, my name's Laura Angela Bagnetto, and I am the host and editor of Africa Calling. And it is a current affairs podcast that comes out once a week. I'm in snowy Paris right now, but we work very closely with the Hause and Kiswahili service, and also with all our African correspondents throughout the continent. And that's something that I'll tell you all about, plus how we do our programming. And if you have any questions, please feel free I'll stop every so often if you want to ask anything. And I also have a few clips to play so you can get an idea of how our podcast works. Just to let you know, I come from an African news background. I know, but I do. But our podcast is a bit different. We used to do a monthly one called Africa Stories in the 55, which was on African writers and literature. So this one is our latest offering, and it takes on a slightly different dimension because it's more of a news program in podcast form. So we've been running weekly for the past 4 months, and we're focused on good quality, sound-rich features, no telephone sound, which is difficult when you're on the ground and you're trying to get stuff done. But I can from Paris call anybody in Africa who a minister or somebody like NGO and get an interview. But what we want is our correspondents on the ground who are actually going up to them, getting live sound, getting good sound, and getting the story from their perspective, not from my perspective, because my perspective isn't important here. So it's about African voices speaking about African news and features. And we do try to put in features, but with COVID, it's really hard because there's not as many festivals. Well, there's this one, but there's not as much going on in terms of like outdoor things that people would normally follow. So that's, part of the issue this year, but no worries. I mean, we're doing a lot in terms of news. So we have African correspondents throughout the continent, but we also have a feature of African analysts. So there's a major news event happening. They're not necessarily on the continent, but they are African. So because we want the African perspective. And we're also trying to create a community from the podcast, because community is really important, especially in a time where everybody is separated but together. So when we ask our correspondents to go out and do stuff, we say, can you please take a photo of yourself in the fields, with your microphone, doing your hard work. And then that's what we also put on our social media. So on Twitter, we're at Africa__calling. And you'll see pictures of all our correspondents actually working in the field. So that's something that's really important to us. So just to get started, we basically are doing a roundup of African news. So we broadcast on Friday, and the podcast drops then Friday afternoon. So you have the whole weekend to listen to it. But if something happened, you were away, you could definitely pick up an Africa Calling podcast and listen to what happened, the events that happened in Africa over the week. We have a few bits of news, just very quick news, just so that you know what's going on. And then the rest is basically what's been happening out in the field, with a Q&A from our correspondents, analysis, report from the field. And we also have our Hause and Kiswahili service. So basically what we're doing here is trying to use all our resources at RFI. So we're Radio France International, and we have 17 language services. They're building up a number of the African languages. They just launched Fulfulde, and we've had Mandinkan for a couple of years. And then we have the Hause service in Lagos, who I deal with every week, and also the Kiswahili service that used to be in Dar es Salaam, but now they're in Nairobi. So, which is great. And so we get their perspectives as well every week on the podcast. So, but basically we're trying to use all our resources here. We also have a French Africa service here and a Portuguese Africa service here. So we also take their news and we translate it, and then you get it in English, because that's the point. I mean, that you can get stuff in English, even from different languages, also from local languages, but we'll speak about that later. So, and we also, for our production package, we wanted to do something like with an identifiable jingle. So every time you hear that, you'll know, oh, that's Africa Calling. It must be Friday, or whenever you decide to download it. We have jingles that cut in between each of the segments so that you get an idea. Okay, we're moving on to, correspondents in the field. So that's what we've been doing. There's 6 parts to the podcast. So, which is typically about 30 to 40 minutes. So, and there's a song at the end that's picked by one of my colleagues here, Allison Hurd, which is great. We'll talk about that later. So I'm going to talk about each section and play a sound from each section, a short sound up to a minute. And if you have any questions, also please feel free to listen to them or to ask. And as this is a news pod, we do a Q&A every week. It's very topical. It can be done at the last minute. The first one I'm going to play for you is we did a Q&A with our correspondent, Nina Gabrielle Mitch, in Lubumbashi in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I'm playing this because it's quite interesting. Roger Lumbala, who's a former Congolese MP, but is also an alleged former warlord, was arrested in Paris. So he was arrested here. But we didn't want to get the perspective of here because, well, that's not Africa, is it? So although, it was here, we went to her to find out what Congolese people are thinking, and also, some different aspects that they haven't covered in the French news here or the international news. So I'm going to play you a sound right now. I hope you can hear it. Let's see. It is, here it is. And it's my question as well. So let's see. Okay, it's supposed to go. Now, in 2020, Lumbala had created a political party to support DRC President Felix Tshisekedi. Do you believe Lumbala can count on the support of President Tshisekedi?
Not at all, because the presidency can never intervene in matters related to justice. We witnessed the trial of a close political partner of the president of the DRC, who, after multiple trials, ended up being indicted by the court and is now serving his sentence. Roger Lumbala's political party was just a means of relying to the ruling party, given that he was an opponent of the former president, Joseph Kabila.
Okay, so that's sort of the first one. And that's, a basic idea. We ask, it's about a 5-minute segment, and we ask questions of the correspondent, but we ask the correspondent to give us the questions, and then, we can discuss it later. But that is because we want it from an African perspective. I mean, I can write the questions. I've been working on African news for 20 years, but it's not up to me. I want to hear what people in the Democratic Republic of Congo have to say, and that's why this is so important. And you don't see it from any other podcast that comes from outside of the African continent. But we want to use our resources here to be able to uplift and use African voices. so that Africans will listen to podcast. I mean, that who our audience is. And if other people listen, even better. But that's basically the point. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is the Hause service. And so that we do a Q&A either with the Hause service in Lagos each week, or we do a Q&A with the Kiswahili service who are in Nairobi. So, and the point is that although we're speaking in English, people speak who speak different languages have different views, particularly on the ground. And for instance, the Hause language is spoken in Nigeria, parts of Niger, Chad, Cameroon, and Ghana. And most Hause speakers who live in northern Nigeria are Muslims. So it was the same region where there was skepticism in the past regarding polio vaccines. Some feared it would make people infertile. It was some misinformation, but unfortunately, it led to a lot of challenges with getting the polio vaccine out. This is like almost 20 years ago. So now we have the COVID-19 vaccines. So one of our regular journalists that we talked to from the Hause service is Garba Aliyu Zaria, and we asked him, what about that? What do people think on the ground about the vaccines? Because this has already been an issue. So let me just play you what he let's see. And here's Garba.
It's a common thing to any northerner, particularly the Hausa speaking, to take that as a serious issue because of the prevailing information. There is wide information regarding cases and death. That is the pandemic, the virus. And people who are very conversant with news updates, they watch on television and radio that COVID-19 virus is not a joke. So they watch it in many countries. Saudi prevented many Muslims from going for the annual Hajj rituals. And Jerusalem as well prevented or closed their borders against visitors and pilgrims. So to the northern people, they now take it very serious, but not as very serious as it should be.
Okay, so that was Garba Aliyu Zaria, and I mean that way, I don't put my stamp on this. He says exactly how people think, and we're not feeding some sort of idea that, oh, look, Nigerians think this, or people in the north think this, or so that's the whole point, is to get their voice, what they think. And he's the best place to speak about this story. So as for the Kiswahili service, which I'm sure a number of you out there are more familiar with, but it, as I said, recently moved from Dar es Salaam to Nairobi. But that doesn't mean that they don't care about what's happening in Tanzania, because a lot's happening right now. We just did a segment last week with Emmanuel Makundi, who's the editor of the Kiswahili service. And we spoke about Tanzania and their lack of COVID, or however you want to interpret that. But Tanzania is a major hub. I mean, many people go there for work, to relax. There's conferences there, and there's a lot of practicalities about travel, especially in the time of COVID, when they're saying that there is no COVID. So he spoke about something practical about pricing and the problems of getting a test, because you need a test to leave and you need a test to get there. So let me just play you what he said. Let's see.
It does not necessarily, if you are Tanzanian, your amount is lower, but everyone has to pay to get a test, and also the test is only done by through the national laboratory. So not any other hospitals that were allowed to test for COVID, but rather the government is holding on that, and that if you want to take a test, for example, if I go to Tanzania and I want to come back to Kenya, I will have to have my test 1 week before travel, because there's a lot of people, long queues at the national laboratory. People are missing their flights. So it's a little bit crazy, and then it become very crazy when the government said that it is $100.
So we got an idea of how expensive it was. He said in another part of the Q&A that it was actually $30 US dollars at the beginning, or no, sorry, 10 US dollars, 30 shilingi, and then they hiked it up to 100 US dollars, which is quite cost prohibitive for anyone. So that's, some information that you needed to know if you're going to go there. And Makundi was on the scene. So that's our Kiswahili service. And we regularly have meetings, and we talk about like what is the most important thing, not for us, but for the people in the region. So that's how we come to an idea of, okay, let's talk about this week. So next we come to reportage, or sorry, that's in French, reporting, which is my favorite part, which is the most, it's most labor intensive because there's a lot of moving parts. We want people to have good sound, good ambience, sound rich, no telephone sound, but we don't want someone to just call somebody and do it. We want you to go to the place and get the story, and get a story that people don't know. Whoops. Oh, this is, there we go. Okay, sorry, I think it was buffering. So it's not easy. It's very challenging. For instance, we got a great ecological story. The journalist went out on a lake in a boat with an expert, and spoke to this expert about the issues. Oops. It's buffering again. Spoke about the issues of what's happening on the lake. But the issue is that she recorded it in stereo. And if you are not very, like, if you don't know your recorder well, or if you're worried, record it in mono, because in stereo it gets all the sound and not just the voice that's right in front of the microphone. So I mean, that is my most basic tip to give you today, is record mono, because that way, when she recorded it in stereo, we heard the waves. We didn't hear the person. It had to be dead, unfortunately, which is the problem. So anyway, I want to play you a piece that one of our correspondents in Gambia, she's one of our star correspondents. She went to the border with Senegal, where groundnut buyers are giving farmers a better price for groundnuts than the government. So, which is very bizarre. And in this piece, you'll get an idea of how we look to use sound, because it really makes the piece come to life. And also, we hear people who speak English and Wolof. So let me play you this right now.
A farmer Yoruba said he had bumper harvest this year like many other farmers. According to him, most farmers would have loved to sell their groundnuts to the government agencies, but the price offered is not encouraging.
Decision is somehow fair, but definitely the price is low. The price, that's the only problem. Hadn't been the price is okay, all Gambian farmers will sell their groundnut to the governments. I know that. I need to support my country in terms of development, and our best resources here is groundnut, but the price is low.
While most farmers prefer to sell to the wholesalers, some are still selling to the government. Binta is one of them, who is at the government purchasing center.
I need money. Selling groundnut to the cooperative has more benefits than selling to those coming to our homes to buy it. Selling here is better for me. I brought 2.5 bags of groundnuts, and I was given another 1.5 bag to bring along.
So that was Sally Jang in Farafeni Market, which is on the border with Senegal. That's right down there. That's only one of 5 people she interviewed who she put in the piece. So it was quite interesting, and we got a lot of good feedback on that. Next, I'm going to talk to you about what we do here in Paris, because we also deal with the Portuguese or Lusophone service, the Portuguese Africa service, and the French Africa service. So what we try to do is, for English-speaking Africans, we want to give you news that might not be translated from Portuguese or from French, and so we're trying to give you sort of additional information that you might not have, or maybe you have friends there and you can't read Portuguese. I can't read Portuguese, so that's sort of what we're trying to do, convey more information. So we got an interesting story from the Portuguese service in Africa about Guinea-Bissau's public prosecutor. Now, apparently, this happened just last month and a half ago. Interpol thought that this international arrest warrant for a former political candidate was made with political motives, which goes against the whole idea of Interpol. It's all about crime. It's not about politics or revenge. So they dropped, they dropped the whole case and the arrest warrant. So we featured Suleiman Kassama, the lawyer for the PAIGC political party, because he wanted the attorney general fired. So let me just tell you that. Where did it go? Okay. Let's see. No. Oh, actually, sorry, don't realize that's not on here. So I apologize for that. But basically, that's what we do. We get a lot of sounds like that that you don't necessarily hear. And we also do analysis. So we interview 1 to 2 African analysts each week. The emphasis is on African because we want an African perspective. And they give their unique insight as to what's happening on the ground. So my colleague Daniel Finnan, interviewed Suleiman Baldo, who's the senior advisor for the Century, which is a think tank on conflict, and he's based in Washington, D.C., but he is an African. And the piece is usually 5 minutes, so I took part when he was talking about the uptick in fighting in Darfur. So, let me put that out for you.
Authorities in West Darfur State say they've approved a security plan and the government has deployed troops to the region. How well placed do you think they are to deal with clashes?
Well, Sudanese say that they have deployed Sudanese forces in West Darfur. Darfur of security forces, except that when security forces are locally recruited, become part of the infighting, fight for their side of their ethnic group. And therefore, for example, elements of the forces who are locally recruited in West Darfur are joining other Asian people from nationalist groups of Arab origin to attack the displaced from the Masai group. Members of the forces who are from that group, they fought back to protect the displaced. Then the government has to send in reinforcements. Forces are not from the region because those in the region are compromised by their own ethnic affiliation, and they are on both sides of the conflict.
So that was our analyst. We try to get men and women, not only men, but that's sort of our goal. And of course, we look for African specialists, whether it's security, whether it's Sahel. That's really important. So that's about it regarding our weekly features, but we do occasionally have specials where we just take a break from the news because sometimes you need that. And we did this for Christmas Day, and we thought we'd pick something that topical that was important across the continent, not just in a couple of countries, and that we thought would be so that we thought would be land rights was very important. So we took a look at 3 aspects of land rights from Liberia, Ghana, Ghana and Kenya. And we're going to play you a piece by Ghana correspondent Zubaida Mabuno Ismail. Did her report on how women farmers in Northern Ghana have been trying to get plots of land to farm enough crops to be able to sell and not subsist farming. So this is an excerpt of her report.
For this town, we did identify very main communities. Then we sent to the engagement talking to witches to help them, the women access the land. So they were able to give us some amount of land so that we do farming and then be able to share it for the women.
Access and control of farmland has been more successful for women engaged in the community. Traditional council and head of clans have argued no women have been denied access to farmland. Your woman is argued.
Sorry, back at some connection problems. Again, Bagnetto, our Ghana correspondent, and she was doing a piece on land rights for official. Wait till this is back.
Okay, most successful engaged in the community. Traditional council and heads of clans argued no women have been denied access to farmland. Yolugu land is an elder from the municipality said the traditional council has now resolved and given the 80 hectares of land to the women.
Okay, and then to November.
Has now resolved entirely bequeath the 80 hectares of land to the women.
The cheapest results in women own this land for farming because they can support care for their children's education. They held on to the decision for a long time that women don't farm. All we've done in the past is ask them to prepare our meals and send them to the farm while we cultivated our crops.
So that was you got bits and pieces of this Zubaida Mabuno Ismail. So you got pieces of Zubaida Mabuno Ismail's piece on African land rights. So which is really interesting, and I found the piece. Oh, and I found the Guinea-Bissau piece. So let me just play it for you, and then we can talk about dubbing pieces because that's really important. I have another piece to play for you too. This is Guinea-Bissau, and this is, if you remember, this is the Interpol piece.
Para nós, questão era exigir. Nós exigimos, fizemos isso.
We continued to request the sacking of Attorney General Fernando Gomes. He agreed to investigate a case when he knew full well that he was not complying with the law, Article 100 of the Criminal Code, or any other article for that matter. Obviously, this is not without consequences. What this group of lawyers would have liked to hear, rather, was a decree removing Fernando Gomes from the post of Attorney General, and to see someone to be appointed to the job who will be given all necessary technical and personal means to carry out their duties.
Técnicas como pessoas de exercer o cargo como deve ser.
Thank you, Casiologist, for your comment. Yeah, we're trying to get all the language services together. So our newest service is the Fulfulde service. And this is quite an interesting piece because it was a huge issue here in France. There was a report that coming out of Mali that the French Air Force had strafed a wedding and had killed a number of people. But the French Air Force was saying that it was jihadists. And our Fulfulde service stepped in and actually, unfortunately, on the phone, and we never do phone, but this was a very special piece, actually talked to somebody who had been attacked. This person, this journalist, who I don't want to mention because of security reasons, she got someone, and a lot was based on this person's eyewitness account. So let me just play that for you, because that's the use of the full day service, really important here. Let me just play this, and we got an original story.
Suddenly I heard the sound of an aircraft, and then the sound of something falling. I got up to run and saw that I was injured. I couldn't run. I was at a wedding of a person who lives in the middle of the fields. He brought us under trees in the field. We were making tea in the afternoon when the attack took place. We left Bunti for Kikara on a tractor. A doctor's vehicle took us to Douentza. We left Douentza and arrived in Bandiagara. The Dozo hunters hit us again.
So that's about it. Thank you, Lydia, for your comments. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to talk about that, or if you want to know some of the challenges that we've had, because, I'm not on the African continent, although I do go on a regular basis. Because of COVID, that's been a problem. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, or if you have any, we have lots of correspondents, but we're always looking for more. So if you come from a place that you are a journalist, let us know if you speak English. We're always looking for great stories. So, if anyone needs tips or anything, even afterwards, I'm more than happy to help, or can help connect you to someone who could help. Our email here is RFI africacalling@gmail.com. So RFI, then africacalling@gmail.com, all one word. So if anyone wants to contact me later, not a problem. Right after this, I'm going to voice our next podcast. So that's going to be, I can even tell you what's on it. I have the lineup here. We're going to be talking about Liberia, because they are having part of a war crimes trial that was coming from Finland. It's going to start in Liberia on Monday. So we have a report on the ground in Liberia. We're also talking about the roundup of the AU summit. What succeeded, what wasn't talked about. We have an expert on that, a very good one. I really like him. And we're also talking about vaccines to Africa, because this is a major issue, and there's a lot of problems with this. We need to find out what's going on. We have some information on that. And also Nigeria. They have to register their SIM cards. We spoke to the Hause service to see what's going on there and how that's causing a bit of a panic. And also, we have an update on Cabo Delgado in Mozambique. So apparently, there's not as much fighting has been reported, but there's other issues that are happening, including the commander who just died allegedly of COVID. So anyway, so that's what you're going to get on Africa Calling this afternoon, or this evening for the people on Eastern Africa time. So let me know we can end now, or if anybody has any questions, more than happy to answer them. Or I could keep talking. So if you know podcasts, this is a bit different. It is more of a news program. What I used to do was interview African writers. So anyone who's written a book, who was an African, African literature. We interviewed a bunch of people. That was a 3-year program that we did that ended about last year. Also because of COVID, it was quite difficult. So, I can speak about challenges. I know that it's really difficult at times to get someplace like, here, like you can drive or you can take, the car. And sometimes that's not a possibility. You have to take a bus from point A to point B if you're in Mali, for instance, or if you're, in Ghana. And so what we do is we also understand, both me and Daniel Finnan, who's the producer, have worked on the ground in Africa. And we understand there's a lot of challenges with electricity, with internet. And so we bring that on board, and we try to help journalists who have issues with that. And we understand. I mean, sometimes something can't be done. Sometimes you have it slotted and we just don't have a report this week because there was some unforeseen circumstances. So, but that's part of the game. That's part of doing the news. And but that's about it. I mean, I don't know what else to say. But I've enjoyed talking to you all, and I do hope that you listen to Africa Calling. We're on all podcast platforms, Android and Apple. So please check us out. We're on Pocket Cast. We're on Stitcher. We're on Spotify. So we're also on the Apple stuff. We're on Google Podcasts. So please, and it's free, of course. It's every Friday afternoon, evening, if you're, as I said, in Eastern Africa time. So yeah, please check us out.